Well, as you know, if you listen to this program, we don't exactly love Lindsey Graham.
Wait, what? Are you changing policies?
Stu thought we were being sarcastic for all these many, many, many years. And no, actually.
No.
We hate the guy. And we think he is...
hate is strong. I think we dislike him with all the intensity of a billion white-hot burning suns.
Yeah, okay, that's
all
probably
I'd say.
better stated there. We hate the things that he does.
Right.
With a passion.
Yes.
And we'd like to spray Mace in his face.
Hey.
Wait, hold it just a second. That was...
We wouldn't like to spray Mace, not actual
What we
Mace.
would like to do is maybe see if someone else who has the last name Mace wants this slogan for free.
It's not a good
Mace
slogan.
in the face of Lindsey Graham. I'd give it to her for free. Absolutely
Mace
free.
in the face to replace Lindsey.
I think just Mace in the face
All right.
of Lindsey would be fine.
okay.
But I mean, she can do whatever she wants. I give it to her for free. I'm not even going to ask her about it because I don't want her gushing over that great slogan that we're just handing to her. Nancy Mace is the first female graduate from the Citadel in Charleston. Her father was a brigadier general. She is a business owner. She's a wife. She's a mother. And I think if I had to get an answer from her, the first thing out of the chute, I would say, Nancy, because she's on the phone, Nancy, I'm a Verizon customer, and I don't mind Verizon turning over records to the government if the government is going to make sure that they try to match up a known terrorist phone with somebody in the United States. So I don't think you're talking to terrorists. I know you're not. I'm not. So I don't have anything to worry about with this NSA thing. How would you respond, Nancy?
Well, good morning, y'all. I want to thank you for having me on this morning. I'm honored to be on the program. I guess, Graham may be willing to give up his rights, but hopefully after June 10th, 2014, he won't speak for the rest of us. That's my answer.
So, how concerned are you on the NSA? What is your big passion? Let's start there. What's your passion?
Well, over the last couple of weeks and months, I've been talking to folks around South Carolina and around the country and making this decision. This is a big decision. This is a United States Senate. It's not something you wake up one day and say, gee, I think I should run against one of the most powerful people in the country. But what I hear from people, and I agree, is that Washington is out of touch. The establishment and the elitists in D.C. think they know better than the people. And I haven't lost hope. I don't think South Carolina has either. And so what I've been telling folks is that you can't change Washington until you change who you send to Washington. But I think the question of my campaign is going to be a simple one. It is, do you trust this government? Do you trust this government with your health care? Do you trust this government with your taxes? Do you trust this government with your personal email and phone records? Because I don't.
Why should I trust you?
Well, I think that we have leaders in Washington. We've seen folks like Senator Jim DeMint, and he's mentored many great leaders in D.C., and we now have folks up in Washington right now like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Mike Lee, and I want to join them because they are doing what they were elected to do. They are leading. And more people are going to follow their lead because that's where the conservative movement is headed. And that is where hopefully eventually the Republican Party is headed, in the direction of restoring the Constitution and free market principles.
You didn't really answer the question, though, on why I should trust you. What are your qualifications of look, everybody says great things, but then they get up and they don't ever do it. And,
right.
We're tired of people saying, well, I'm different, and you can trust me. And, look at Marco Rubio. He gets up, and
right.
Everybody thought he was a savior.
No, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've heard, too, talking to folks, is that, all these groups and people, they rally behind someone, and then, they talk a good game, but when they get up to Washington, they don't walk it. And nobody wants to see that happen in the future. What I can say is that I think that my track record in the past, being the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, it doesn't define who I am. And it's just one example in my life where I have stood strong and stood principled and not wavered. I was on a no-fail mission. And that's what we as Republicans should be on. We cannot afford to lose in the future, because if we lose our country, we lose our children. And
how's your soul?
It's stirring. I see hardworking Americans trying to reclaim our country, and the response from people 3 days into the campaign has been overwhelming, both in South Carolina and around the country.
Not the question. I don't mean to be, a stickler here. This is what I usually do to every person that wants to be in the Senate.
Right.
My question was, how is your soul? Do you know the value of your soul? How is your relationship with the originating source of your soul? And what makes you think you're not going to go into a lion's den, because that's what it is, and then you're just not going to lose your soul up there?
Well, what I can say about my soul is that I am founded on very specific principles, and I do not waver, and I believe I'm on the right side here, on the right side of the angels. And when I go to Washington, I'm not going to waver from that. I have shown consistently in my life that I'm a very hard worker and I'm self-reliant, and that's what I want to bring to D.C. I see what's happening up there, and it's very frustrating.
What are your principles?
Well, in terms of...
You said your life is founded on certain principles. What are they?
Well, I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what our country was founded on, and that's what I believe in.
Where do you stand on immigration, amnesty, the DREAM Act?
Well, I think that, when I think of immigration, I think the whole notion of comprehensive immigration. So that kind of reform reminds me a lot of something else we called comprehensive, and that was comprehensive health care reform. And the price tag for Obamacare is what? Do we still know what that is? We don't. And so I don't believe the Gang of Eight when they claim that plan is going to be deficit neutral. When was the last time government provided an estimate that was actually accurate as to the fiscal impact? I don't think something like immigration can be tackled in a 1,200-page bill. Again, this goes back to my whole argument about trust. Do you trust this government to do what it says it's going to do?
Can you tell us say some really mean things about Lindsey Graham?
No, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna reply in time.
Because we have a good audience here for that.
Yeah, can I ask you this question?
Sure.
You're going up against a guy who has $3 million war chest already.
6.3 was it?
6.3 million. $6.3 million war chest. You're going to run against him in a state that allows the Democrats to vote in the Republican primary. There's a ton of Democrats that don't want to see Lindsey Graham go anywhere. He has a fortune. The last person that spends the most amount of money in the last 30 days is going to be the winner. And this guy also is going to get all of the Democratic votes. How do you think you're going to beat him?
Well, I disagree with you on part of your remarks, because no one in this race is going to have the mountain of money that he is. He has special interests. He has PACs. He has a lot of money, and no one's going to raise that kind of cash. But what we are going to do is build a grassroots network around the state. And that's the only way you're going to win in this race, is if you're able to have a message that I think that most people can believe in, and also have a grassroots network. And that's what we're doing right now. We've been overwhelmed by the response of people to be included in this race. And in South Carolina, it's a runoff state. So the goal here is to force a runoff. And I believe the most conservative candidate wins the primary after the runoff.
He's one of theirs, and there's a handful of these senators, and they're usually the ones that have been in the Senate the longest, that people tend to think are good guys, or I might disagree with him, but it's Lindsey Graham, or it's this senator or that senator. But he's in a handful of senators that are absolutely cutthroat ruthless and will do anything to hold on to power. We know of another senator who is a guy who will destroy you, your family, your business, and everybody thinks he's a great guy. And he is not. Behind the scenes, he is a ruthless, ruthless man. Lindsey Graham is the same. Are you prepared?
I say bring it on. I mean, before I even became a candidate, I saw some of this going on behind the scenes, and all that did was motivate me to jump into this race even more, because I think that is precisely what is wrong with politics today.
You, you have a famous father. He's a brigadier general. But what is the most important thing you learned from your mother?
My mother is a school teacher, and she is very compassionate. My mother loves her country. She's very patriotic, but she too was a very hard worker. And what both my mom and my dad taught me was the value of hard work. I haven't gotten anything in this life except through my hard work, and they showed me how to do that growing up.
I have a couple questions, Nancy, for you. First of all, you mentioned Jim DeMint, who was a great senator from South Carolina. One of his big proposals that never really got anywhere was term limits. I'm coming to the point now where I don't want to support anybody who does not support term limits. What do you feel about term limits?
I absolutely support term limits.
Okay, good.
If I would say to you, I am absolutely against anyone who supports term limits, what would you say?
I would say I still support term limits.
Okay,
good.
What's so great about this country?
What is the biggest problem facing us today?
Again, I think the biggest problem facing this country today is trust. I mean, do we trust this government to do what it says it's going to do? Do we trust this government with our individual liberties to protect us? I mean, who's going to protect us from ourselves? And we have something called the Constitution, and we're a nation of laws. And, I keep hearing that and going back to that and I look at what's happening with our tax dollars. I look what's happening with Obamacare, and I look at what's happening with our individual liberties when our personal email records and phone records are going through with the NSA spying program. Do you trust this government?
Would you like to take another opportunity to say something really mean about Lindsey Graham? Because we have that time now, and I just wanted to...
That's your job. I mean...
Yes, it is, actually.
Nancy, you've mentioned the Affordable Care Act a couple of times. If you were in the Senate right now, would you be with the 12 senators who are trying to defund Obamacare, or would you
not?
Would you not?
And why?
Well, I believe that government is mindless and soulless. I think it's incapable of caring for people at a human level. And as conservatives, I think that we need to repeal Obamacare, and I would stand up to defund this bill. I mean, I don't believe, unlike Senator Graham, I don't believe that defunding Obamacare is a bridge too far.
What do you think? What do you think of the closing down of the embassies? This last weekend, we've closed 19 or 21 embassies around the world because we have some giant threat from Al Qaeda.
Right. And, obviously, I mean, I'm not privy to the intelligence briefings about what is actually happening and what the threat is and where it is. And I think they're closing more embassies. But I do believe I believe our foreign policy is adrift. I don't think we've been a steadfast ally of a friend to our allies. I think our lack of resolve has emboldened our enemies. Intelligence gathering is important to defeat radical Islam, but you can't prevent 100% of the threats. And, at what point, I mean, you just can't choose between security and liberty. We can't forfeit all of our liberties. And as I mentioned earlier, who's going to protect us from ourselves? And the Constitution does that. And, I look at us as a nation of laws, and the Constitution protects our rights and our property and our phone and our email, and Graham might be willing to forfeit those rights, but I'm not, and hopefully on, June 2014, he won't speak for the rest of South Carolina.
Are there any selfies of you that are going to pop up on Twitter?
I hope not.
Okay.
Can you say that with certitude, Nancy?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, gosh, I hope not. So it is going to be, I'm looking forward to a vigorous primary. I want to debate a lot of these issues, and in the coming weeks and months, I'm going to be putting out what I believe the policies of this country should be, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the reaction from people over the last 2 or 3 days has been overwhelming.
Nancy, hope to talk to you again. She is going to be running against Lindsey Graham, and honestly, we couldn't wish you better. We just couldn't wish you more luck. Thank you very much, Nancy. We'll talk again.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
You bet. Nancy Mace, first female graduate from the Citadel in Charleston, and She the first one that's coming out that is announced her candidacy?
As far as I know, officially, yes. There may be one other, but as far as I know, officially,
it is going to be a brutal and hard fight to get him out, and it's going to take somebody that really knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
That's
a tough race.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be in South Carolina,
and
the
Republicans will dump money into Lindsey Graham.
Yep.
Dump money into Lindsey Graham.
How's your soul? How do you answer that? Nobody knows how to answer that. How's your soul?
I just asked you. I just asked you.
Right, but his answer, he stopped halfway through it. He said, I try to live my life in a way that...
Go ahead.
That was his answer.
I stopped him. I said, there you have it. You're on the right road. I try to live my life in a way. What Nancy just did was, I said, and she was starting down the right path, and she says, well, I live my life by certain principles. Good. What are those principles? Mm-hmm. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? I don't even know what those principles really mean.
As fairly important
to
principles.
me. No, they are. But how do you apply those life, liberty, and pursuit? That's your compass. That's your gauge. That's your guide. That's what's going to keep you life.
Documents aren't the worst compass to have, or at least part of that.
Mm-hmm. Tell me the principles behind that apply directly to you. Pursuit of happiness that keep you anchored when a giant storm is coming.
It may have been, though, that she was answering that as the principle she will fight for. And obviously, she holds those to be important.
I don't under.
I will say it's a tough question, though. You're bringing somebody in for a first interview, and you ask.
I ask every senator,
you say, "How's your soul?" And then, without fail, the person goes, "What?" And then you have to explain it in a different way.
Not true. The ones that I trust have always said something that I didn't necessarily agree with, but were in the ballpark of somebody who had self-examined themselves enough to say, I'm headed for real trouble. What's going to keep me anchored?